review segment for today. We shall be taking a look at some of the stories making the headlines. But remember to join us with the hashtag Breakfast Daily on all social media platforms, and not forgetting the WhatsApp line
0550-585-832. We'll start with the daily graphic. Accra gets boost. That is, we got a 500 million Ghana Citi as loan insurance to farmers. So that's really good, and that story is on page 3.
We are hoping to set it up soon.
Yes, so let's see what that looks like. Court finds businessman for unlicensed insurance firm operation. That story is on page 16. And finally, Kofi Annan's body arrives today. That story is also on page 16 of the Daily Graphic.
And it's also on the front page of the Ghanaian Times this morning. It says Kofi Annan's remains arrives today. The full story is on page 16 this morning. And also KAIPTC UG celebrate Kofi Annan. Full story on page 17. Now, President Lord's government policy for agri sector growth in 2017. Also here it says KIA Terminal 3 to commence full operation September 15. And finally, South Sudan plane crash kills 19. Really sad story.
Yeah, that's sad indeed. On to the Finder. We did nothing wrong. GNPC outlines benefits of Litasco deal. That story is on page 2. 500 million Ghana Citi credit facility for agric in the offing. That's coming from the president, and that story is on page 8. 6.8 million Ghanaians are poor. That is by the GSS, and you can learn more about that on page 4. Physician assistants to embark on strike today. That story is on page 14. And finally, 14,254 nurses get financial clearance. That story is also on page 14. Yes, finally, indeed.
Now let's take a look at the Daily Statesman. The Daily Statesman says massive growth in agriculture, and that's on page 2 this morning of the Daily Statesman. Also, I need the whole others are bot mercenaries. Page 2 has that story. NDC questions loyalty of Deputy General Secretary, who is also currently running for the senior position of General Secretary in the party. And President back from China with goodies. And there's a beautiful picture here of the president and his vice as they interact, probably post the China experience.
Yes. Now on to the Daily Heritage. There's hardship in Ghana. That's coming from Gabby, and you can read up on that on page 2. Fallout from South Africa 2010 FIFA World Cup. Derek Boateng sues John Paintsel. Yes, over $220,000 borrowed money. That story is on page 3. And finally, don't contest 2020 polls. This is coming from, General Nunu Mensah to former President John Mahama. That story is on page 5.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the New Crusading Guide. The New Crusading Guide says Presby Church donates to PSEC Legon. Interesting. Well, our 80th anniversary is coming soon, so look out for that. Fresh trouble for Kennedy Ejapong. Former state attorney smashes Asin Central MP with 25 million Ghana Citi suit.
Looks like this hasn't been his year at all.
Interesting. That's a solid observation, actually. Tension in Odotobri NPP. MP Chairman Secretary allegedly orchestrating DCE's removal. And there's a picture here of Nana Kwame Asamoah, the DCE for Amansi Central. Now pressure piles for controller to go, and also $14.4 million revenue loss at Port Warren. And this coming from the chief of Tema, that's the Tema Manche. He has this to say. Now,
on to the Chronicle. Nunu Mensah plays JM's secret tape. His supporters can attack me also like they are doing to Kojo Yanka, but I don't care. More on that story on pages 2 and 3.
He was telling President Muhammad that what did you not finish that you want to come again and do?
That's not nice. I think they can compete without getting dirty.
He was appointed as Chief of Defense Staff during Atameo's administration, and then when the former president came, that's President former President John Dramani Mahama came to remove him and then put someone else there. So that's how come
it could be personal.
That's probably why
let's compete in a friendly manner, guys. Okay, so it says here 2.2 billion Ghana Citi earnings from cocoa used to import food in 2016. That is sad. That's coming from our president. MPP losing corruption war. KNUST dawn. Yes, those are the stories in the Chronicle.
Now the Herald newspaper says confusion hits Catholic bishops over National Cathedral. Amoako left hanging by the church. Interesting story. Dark clouds hang over $500 million ECG concession. And also, Akufo-Addo gets cooked free SHS award in Rwanda. The sponsor is a family friend. You know, Akufo-Addo was awarded for the free SHS
family friend?
for the free SHS policy he started in Ghana, and then you know there's an allegation that it was cooked.
Wow.
Interesting. Finally, here it says Ranford Jampo rejected as UG political science head.
Aww.
So interesting story there.
Yes, on to the Business and Financial Times. 1D1F requires $10 billion to thrive. That story is on page 3. So 1D1F requires $10 billion to thrive. BOG acts to curb banking fraud. Value of reported fraud hits 190.38 million Ghana cedis. That story is also on page 3. And finally, GOGIP set to lose millions of dollars in insurance premium. That story is also on page 4 of the Business and Financial Times.
Now let's take a look also at the Today newspaper. Interestingly here, John Peter Amewu, the current Minister of Energy, has his picture here, and it says Doomsor looms. See, well, the full story is on page 3. You should see page 3 for the full details. According to this report, well, let me just read the full thing. Doomsor looms as debt situation at Gridco worsens. And I don't know the connection between these two yet, but over the past 2 days or 3 days or so, the lights in Kokomemle have been going off, about 3 times or so, just terribly. Yeah, it goes off for a really long time. Wow. From 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Very, very terrible. How have I survived? By grace. By grace. My lights may be off, but the light of the world still shines in my life. Ban Mahama songs at NDC functions. The full story is on page 3. And Alabi has this to say to the NDC leadership. And also, non-formal education neglected. This coming from Pamoja, Ghana.
Okay. Now let's look at some online stories. Starting with suspend Boss MD. Deputy over $3 million payment to Springfield. This is coming from Bawa. And teacher licensure exam begins today despite protest. Again, Kotoka International Airport Terminal 3 goes live with international flights on September 15th. And unemployed nurses to be posted by the end of 2018. Those are the stories from citinewsroom.com.
Okay, now I think we'll just introduce our guest for this morning. We have been joined by Eric Amoako. He's a member of the MPP Communications team. Good morning and welcome, Eric.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
We're doing great. We're doing great. We've also been joined by Adekoka, who is the Greater Accra Regional Chairman, who still is the Greater Accra Regional
Congratulations, by the way. Last time we saw you, you were.
Thank you, thank you.
You were not well last week. I hope you're better now.
I'm getting better.
Good.
You can hear from my voice.
Yeah.
I had to come because your producer was really putting pressure on me. He said,
well, we missed you last week.
He said,
so
you haven't seen me since I
won.
won. So I said, okay, I need to rest for about 2 weeks before coming out.
But congratulations.
Thank
Congratulations. You needed the rest.
You deserve it. As we all know, Kofi Annan is arriving today. So we wanted to hear your thoughts on the great man first before we get into the rest of the topic.
You remember I sat here some 2 weeks ago when I said he should be buried here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember?
Yes.
And the barrage of insults that I had on Ghana
Really?
again. Oh.
Wow.
So when the government announced that they were bringing his body, I said, well, I've been vindicated. So let's welcome his body today and give him a befitting burial. He's an icon, a statesman. He put Ghana on a very high pedestal. So I'm glad that all of us are going to get involved in his burial. And it's good that we are showing love to him after his demise. I've been watching all the stations and the sort of tribute to him. So we'll all be at the airport this afternoon to receive his body and then participate in his burial. I think kudos to the government for giving that honor.
Wonderful.
Well, good morning, Honorable Chairman. And congratulations as well.
He has to pay me my, what do you call it, board allowances, you know.
Really?
Yes. GEPA. They owe me a lot.
That's for another day.
Well, I think that will be considered. I'm sure. Now, we all know that we've lost probably one of the greatest Ghanaians to have ever lived, and I share the sentiments of Mr. Adequaka in terms of the sort of pedestal that he actually puts the whole Ghanaian people on. I mean, anywhere you go, there's two things. It's either there's reference to the blasters or Kofi Annan. I mean, as far as, especially when I live outside of this country. So the moment you say you come from Ghana, there's reference to these two things. And I feel that it was imperative that everything was done to, one, bring him home so that we could also give him a befitting burial, the Ghanaian way, you know. And sometimes, even for us, especially the younger ones, we sort of forget about the sort of cultural or socio-cultural things that are important to us as a people. And it's important that we imbibe that, even in the younger generation, that it's part of our culture. He has served his nation well, he served this world very well. And that is important that once he's going home, we get opportunity to send him away in a more befitting way. So I'm glad that he's coming in. Whilst I was sitting and waiting, I share the same sentiments as to us being able to use his life as some sort of terms of reference for some of us, and even the younger generation, so that we can live, even if we do a certain percentage, or if we live up to a fraction of what he was able to do, I'm sure our country and the world will be a much better place. You could tell he was a very calm, but he had a steely resolve. To be able to get to that height is extremely important, that you have some kind of steel. And he showed that, even under the most trying circumstances, he still held his dignity. And this is one of the things that we probably have to learn in almost all the various facets of our national life, so that it doesn't become your classic MPP, NDC all the time. Because, I mean, I always ask myself, there are certain things that we shouldn't even have a debate about. They should be almost like a fundamental thing. But you realize that when the topics come, then it's actually split right down the middle. It has to be partisan. And I think that it's important that we learn from some of the things that he did.
Wonderful, wonderful. May his soul rest in perfect peace. He arrived today. Tomorrow, I think the public will have the chance to view the body, and then subsequently Wednesday will be for the statesman, more or less, and then it follows from there. Then he shall be buried. Anyway, now let's move on to the agricultural sector. I'm reading from page 3 of the Daily Graphic. It says the agricultural sector is to receive a big boost following the government's move to establish a 500 million Ghana Citi facility to support the growth and development of the sector. And well, this according to the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And the facility is to serve as some sort of insurance for the commercial banks to give out loans at reasonable interest rates to farmers, amongst others. And there was also a revelation that in 2017 there was a growth of about 8.63% in the agricultural sector.
8.36. Yes, and there's also a story here in the Chronicle that I want to read for you, so we have some background. It says here, the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, revealed that the value of food imports into Ghana has increased from $344 million in 2007 to 2.2 billion Ghana cedis in 2016. And he says here that the money we earned from cocoa in 2016, 2.2 billion Ghana cedis, was used to pay for food imports. Now, we all know that agriculture is the biggest employer on the continent, but we've still not been able to grow the sector the way we should. So let's get your thoughts on that.
Well, to start with, the government actually inherited an agricultural sector, I think in 2 or 3 years running before 2017. When we took over, I think it was about 3.6% or so. Last year, agri grew by 8.3%, which means that we made some strides. But again, it's also clear that we have never been able to take full advantage of the potential that agri actually presents. Now, when you go beyond that, actually adding value and then being able to activate the whole value chain and being able to export is something that we have scratched at the surface of it. And coming from where I come from and the experiences that I've had, it's like we have always paid lip service to that.
Why is that?
I don't know. So I can probably go back to the budgets that has been read in the last 20 years. And when there is an allocation made to agric, and then the attendant things that is meant to happen. You see, so you can put money in agriculture, for instance, but if there's no investment in research, in the storage, in making sure that you deal with post-harvest losses, in terms of standards, in terms of adding value or creating a system where we can add value to these products, then the net effect is that you're still doing the same thing. Now, we also have a challenge with importing of this food from all sorts of places by virtue of the fact that their governments are able to support that particular sector to the extent that they even subsidize the sector. In our case, for some strange reason, we've actually been almost, our hands are tied behind our back, and that every single investment or intervention that is going to go into the agricultural sector, if you're not careful, is seen as a subsidy. And most of the Bretton Woods institutions or the institutions that we've dealt with over the period actually will frown upon that. So we found ourselves in almost like a chicken and egg situation where we want to improve the productivity locally, add value, and export. We're talking about exchange rates in the last few days. But the truth of the matter is that if we don't have a concerted strategy to, one, increase the productivity locally, add value, make sure that the products are of a certain global standards, regardless of what we do with the macro and microeconomic policies, it will still have a challenge when it comes to the city, because we are people of 30 million people. If you produce locally and there's an optimum productivity, for instance, and there's optimum consumption, then what happens next? You know, so it has to be almost like a big picture, almost a concerted strategy coming from various aspects of the economy to be able to achieve that. So that I'm happy that the president has shown commitment by also committing this amount of money in the finance bit of the agricultural sector. Because you go to the bank, you have 5, 10 acre or 20 acre, 30 acre. The bank will be reluctant to give you any money to go into either its short-term or medium-term or long-term cash crop production, by virtue of the fact that they feel that there's so many uncertainties along the way that They'd rather give it to somebody who wants to go to China or Turkey or wherever to go and buy goods, or even the same food, and bring it into the country to sell. Now, when you do that, and then I have some extreme views when it comes to importation of food and all that, and I don't think there's a platform to share it. But if you do that, what it means is that regardless of how hard you try, you're always going to put the local production or local entrepreneurs, and I know you're quite passionate about local entrepreneurship. If there is nothing done to either stem or have a concerted strategy to support local entrepreneurs, and you say that let's leave it as liberal as it is and allow people to bring in whatever they want and support the local industry, what will happen is that the local manufactured products or produce that are produced locally would always be more expensive than the one that has been imported. And how are you able to...
Talking about that, especially during the discussion on the $10 billion needed for the one district, one factory.
Exactly. So, and you see, the one district, one factory.
No, I don't want us to get...
No, I'm not going there. I'm saying that agriculture essentially would dovetail into any policy of industrialization. Because, I mean, we know for a fact that we have about 60 to 70% of all our land, which is arable, actually out there not actually farmed, by virtue of the fact that we've not been able to, again, go to mechanize this agriculture and all of those things. But this fund is meant to serve as some kind of insurance to support the particular sector, and then allow the commercial banks to feel a bit more, to make them more amenable to actually giving loans to people who are interested in going into agriculture, the mainstay of our economy. I mean, and there's a lot of things that would actually inure to us. I mean, for instance, you have issues to do with poultry. And the most important, significant reason why we've not been able to do so is the feed. Now we have vast resources. We have big tracts of land that can go into the production of soya beans, for instance, which is a very integral part of the poultry industry. We haven't done it. So there are other things that would inure, and the other sectors or the places along the value chain that will take advantage of these things, because then once you're able to produce the soya bean, you can have enough resources or enough inputs for a poultry industry and other things that we want to do.
Sorry, Ade.
Chairman, now before you answer, we already know what the problems are, right? So all the way in 1957, Nkrumah already identified the need for us.
Are you taking the wind out of my sail?
As
if she was reading my mind.
Maybe I was. You know, the need for us to actually revolutionize the way we engage agriculture. We had Operation Feed Yourself. So what have we not done right that in today's age we are importing so much food into the country?
You took the wind out of my... I was just going to ask you to go back to the fundamentals. You know, look at Accra Plains. How many times have we said that we need to irrigate Accra Plains? This money that the government says goes as insurance, if it goes to put it there and irrigate the land there, that place alone, the plains alone can feed all of us. We pay lip services to... You see, I keep saying, Ghanaians, we are good to wake up in the morning with huge headlines. Then come and sit here and start talking about this. I used to work in a bank called National Savings and Credit Bank, now SSB. I don't know whether you've heard of that bank before. I used to be an agri economist there. And we were giving loans to. That bank collapsed because it was meant to be giving loans to cooperatives and that kind of thing. Companies to boost agricultural production. First and foremost, you must identify who wants to go into agricultural production. Not everybody will want to do that. You understand? And previously we were dependent on small scale, family-based farmers. Most of their kids, when they grow up, they leave the farms and come to the cities. So the older generation, so when you go to all these farming communities, you realize that they are all old age, older people who cannot travel to come to the cities. So the younger generations have disappeared from agriculture. Now, we depend on rain-fed agriculture. So when there's a drought, there's no rain, agriculture dies. No irrigation. We go to all these places. So Nkrumah decided, let's do some industrialization by being agri-based industrialization, where big farms were created. Irrigation projects were supposed to be put in place. That's how China started, and that's where they are today. You go to Malaysia, Singapore, all those countries that with South Korea, we started. That was what they did. In our part of the world, we didn't do those things. As at now, how many irrigated farms have we got in this country? So this money that you say are going to use as insurance, are you going back to the villages where most of the farmers there are old age, about to depart this world? Are the younger generation being encouraged to go back to farm? Everybody wants to go and work in the banks, and the banks are collapsing. Everybody wants a white-collar job to do. You see, so we have to go to the fundamentals. We are fond of giving huge airlines and that, and another day, 5 years down the line, you come and the same thing has happened, because we haven't gone down to resolve the issues that will encourage people to go back to. And these days too, we are talking about commercial agriculture, not those small pockets of farming. You know, we are talking about tractors. We are talking about what you call it, agricultural scientists, all those kind of things. We haven't talked about all those things we are going to.
So being in the field yourself, especially initially, how then would you suggest you encourage young people to get into agriculture?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know, it got to a certain state that we thought farming was a form of punishment to the youth. Even when in school, when you go and you mess up, you go and weed someone. So it imbibes in your mind that always this kind of thing is a punishment, that kind of thing. We need to reverse this thinking. We need to properly identify areas that are arable and ensure that the proper systems are put in place. Like I told you, irrigation. If you go and irrigate our farm place, and then you tell me we're going to encourage people to, the system is in place. But if you are just going to give insurance for what? What kind of insurance are you going to give?
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman.
Yes, we'll continue, but we do have to go for a quick break. We're discussing the agricultural sector in Ghana and what needs to be done to revive it. We'll be right back. Yes, you'll continue when we come back, Chairman.
Tune in to The Point of View, Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. as Bernard Avlet takes the news further. He will bring the right guest, ask them the relevant questions, and get you the real insights you need on the big stories for the day.
I said, property tax, I will pay. If you come to my house, I'll cut you a check. But when did I do my presentation? February.
Yes.
Or February, yes, sometime. Nobody has come to my house.
Really?
Ghana is broke. And, you know, that's the reality we must all come to live with.
The Point of View with Bernard Avlet, Monday and Wednesday nights, only on Citi TV. For regular news checks as they unfold, 2020 news, all day, all the time. Politics, sports, entertainment, business, and more. 2020 news. We bring you the world in 20 minutes.
And that's all the news in 20 minutes.
Okay, welcome back to Breakfast Daily, and we're still talking about the agri sector. That is going to be 500 million Ghana cedis facility set up in respect of supporting agricultural production in general, and also the fact that 2.2 billion cedis was realized in cocoa proceeds, and same was used to buy food back into Ghana. Is a very confusing equation which we are talking about. But I want you to wrap up on it before we move on to the next topipic.
Yes. No, I don't think Chairman finished briefly. Then
look at Burkina Faso. They made a conscious effort to ensure that they were going to, because they're a landlocked economy. What are they going to do? They have to ensure that they invest in agriculture. What happened? They tried to irrigate most of their lands. That place is closer to the desert, but they've been able to irrigate the lands that they are. You go to Burkina Faso and buy onions, buy tomatoes, and all those. When you see the trucks coming from Burkina Faso, it's full of onions and agricultural produce. That's why you spend that much money to go and buy. So let's take a cue from what Burkina Faso has done, where they are landlocked, a desert-prone area, and we are very close to the sea. We've got rivers and all these things here, and we are still importing food. So I believe that the Minister of Agriculture, the government, must go back to the basics. Let's go back to 1957. As she said, let's get the blueprint. What was Kwame Nkrumah's idea about making Ghana an agrarian economy? You see, before you want to be an industrialized economy, it must be an agrarian economy.
And even Arthur Lewis also agreed with
exactly. And you've got the land there.
Okay.
So I want you to look at it, from the perspective of the Ghanaian consumer, right? Because in Nigeria, the Nigerian consumers have grown an acquired taste for their local rice. When I was younger, I ate a lot of local rice. Now you can barely find them anywhere, right? And even when I go to the market, the lady selling salmon will say, this isn't the local salmon, it's from Ivory Coast, as though the one from Ivory Coast, do you get me? So how are we also educating the Ghanaian public to enjoy the things that are made locally, even as something as simple as peanut butter versus margarine? People don't even know that groundnut paste is better for you than all these things that we eat every day. So what do we do to also get
really briefly?
I feel, and I maintain that if we go into a certain, or there's a conscious effort to even, for instance, decrease the importation of rice, or in a more radical sense, go the Nigerian way and ban it. Within a year and a half, 2 years, we will develop a local rice industry. I believe strongly. You see, it's open to the tenets of demand and supply, and then when it comes to convenience and all that. So for me, as an investor, if I have to take my dollars and go to Vietnam or China, but for businesses, you're always almost an advocate for or basically they say necessity is the mother of inventions. So now you have your dollars, you can't bring in the rice. What would you do? You go into that. So there has to be deliberate, conscious, almost contrived reasons to be able to support the local industry. Again, in terms of the taste and everything, I believe, it's an acquired taste. But that's the function of marketing, and my background is marketing. You need to be able to go out there and communicate the benefits and the effect of even an over-reliance on a foreign taste to start with. So these are things that can be done. You see, a lot of politicians have gotten into trouble by advocating very radical things. I'm not going to be one of them today. But the point really is that it is not something that cannot be done. One, you're talking about onions. We're talking about tomatoes. We have the capacity to do so. Yes. But the truth is that if the woman has, or the business person has money, and it's easier for them to cross the border and buy tomatoes, they will not go through the trouble of actually going to start their own. Okay. But that is where government intervention comes in. Again, I just wanted to clarify the insurance thing. The insurance is meant to be a seed fund that sits at the Bank of Ghana. That will allow the commercial banks to lend at a lower rate, and then also be minded by the fact that they're meant to support the agri sector, so that when you go to the bank, you're not chasing the same amount of capital that maybe other business interests are chasing, but this is specifically for people who are interested in the agri sector to go into agriculture, and especially large scale. So what it means is that we need to actually look at it from the perspective of everybody or anything that actually supports the agri sector. Okay. So, for instance, we have issues to do with tractors.
Eric, thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, I know you're going to talk about tractor, but we have
Business and Financial Times today. 1D1F requires 10 billion to thrive. The government is saying that, well, the report is saying that government must establish a $10 billion fund for a minimum of 10 years, which should be dedicated to providing cheap financing to sustain companies under the One District, One Factory initiative. And also, well, this coming from Professor Douglas Boateng. He's a supply chain management expert, and he is also the board chairman of the Public Procurement Authority. So this is what he is saying, that we set up this $10 billion fund, and then, I mean, for a period of 10 years, because if we are to just say One District, One Factory without this particular fund being set up, a lot of cheap and inferior goods would come into the country, and even if you set up your factory, it's only a matter of time that the factory would collapse. So this $10 billion should be used to incentivize or subsidize the local factories so that they'll be able to compete, so that they'll be able to stand on their feet as well within that 10-year period. Because if we just leave them to compete with the international market, it just will not work out. It will collapse. Let's start with you, Joseph Adekoku, on this one.
You see, the same old story. You know, the one District, One Factory, MPP don't think it through. It was a political gimmick. We have got so many factories in this country. It needs to be rehabilitated and reinvented. So many. And we kept asking the questions when they brought this idea. Have you thought about location? Have you thought about all those things that go into sustain a factory? That's what the gentleman is saying now. You know, have you thought about the competition that they are going to get from outside? Like my brother said Eric said recently, just now, a few minutes ago, that why would an investor who has got $10,000 prefer to go and invest in a farm when he can go to China and bring the same thing at a lower rate and make huge profits? We said this, that this thing is a gimmick to win an election. As we sit here now, they said last 2 years, 1.5 years ago, they said you're going to start with 50. The last time they went to a confit to go and some pineapple or whatever factory, they went to cut the president took the whole of the MPP factionaries there to go and cut the sword. Up to now, the factory hasn't emerged. I keep saying, as I said earlier on, we are very quick in this country to give huge headlines. And when you go underneath, hollow, nothing has happened. After 1.5 years, 18 months, they are now telling us they should set up a $10 billion US fund before they can start the project.
No, it's a suggestion coming from.
I'm just saying, yeah. After, so didn't they think about this when they brought the idea to us? And like he said, there are factories here which needs to be resuscitated. And you leave those factories, and then you go to, I don't know, my brother's village, where there's no power, there's no road. It's not true.
They have bauxite.
And then you go and say to One District, you are going to set up a factory there. Even the workforce, those who are going to work there, skilled labor. You say, well, come on, man.
But Chairman, respectfully, we all agree that we do need to produce locally. And going back to Nkrumah's era again, he did not only champion agricultural revolution, he also wanted us to industrialize, because that's the only way we can actually be economically free, right? So the idea of One District, One Factory is not wrong, and it's not unique to MPP.
No, so I said earlier on, there are factories in this country which needs to be put in place. When you go there, they go obsolete machinery. That is why they can compete. I was the board chairman of GEPA. So I've been to most of the factories. They need to be, that was why we set up, what do you call it, Exim Bank. We've now set up the Exim Bank to make sure that the local factories are financed to be able to get on going. And this is what we should be looking at. Go to Temahabo, go to Tema Enclave. So many factories are dying. Most of them, go to the industrial area. What have we? We've turned the factories into churches. Go there. all the factories have been turned to churches because they don't have the necessary equipment that will have to compete, economies of scale and all those things. So that's what we should concentrate on. Than going to set up a new 1D, 1F, which after 5 years, like he said, will collapse. The idea might be brilliant, but when there are things already there that we need to put them right, we are not doing them.
Okay.
And we keep getting new wives and leaving the old wives around.
Okay, Eric, to you. He made a very good point about us not reinventing the wheel. We already know that there are factories in this country that were developed decades ago. We could just, maybe revive those factories and use it. Last week, the founder of Zoom Lion made an example of the jute factory. That in the 70s and 80s, we had a jute factory. We manufactured jute locally, but from the 90s up until now, we've spent over $700 million importing jute into this country when we could just use $10 million to revive that factory. Why aren't we looking at these factories that were once productive and saying, let's revive these factories? We already know what went wrong. We can get the human capital to keep it working instead of reinventing the wheel and bringing up brand new factories.
Well, to start with, I think that is erroneous that we are reinventing the wheel. Also, the government actually has activated, and companies that have already benefited from the stimulus package. You can go to the Ministry of Trade right now and check. I don't have the full details of those factories, but I know for a fact that there are a number of factories, I think about 50 or so, that were viable but were under distress that have had support from the Ministry of Trade through a stimulus package. Again, there needs to be a certain spatial distribution of the industries that we have in this country. And like we all know, we have a comparative advantage to grow a lot of things, to produce a lot of agricultural produce. So the real idea of the one district, one factory is not to kill off existing ones, but one, even to stimulate the increase in production of the same raw materials that would be used for the other industries. For instance, he was talking about Kumfi. When we came into power, we realized that over the last 10 years or so, the smooth cayenne variety of pineapple had been left to die. So what we did was to actually go back and resuscitate the smooth cayenne variety. And we actually gave the Kumfi factory 5 million suckers to be able to grow so that it would feed that industry. Single-handedly, GEPA actually has produced, as we speak, about 25 million suckers of the smooth cayenne variety. If you add that and other things, the interventions that are happening in areas of coconut, and what we've done with the 10-year cashew development plan and all of those, I can tell you that the focus on cashew alone has actually activated the private sector and individuals who hitherto would not have had any interest in farming to go to the BA and other Volta region and other parts. So actually, as a private individual, buy land or get access to land and start growing some of these things. These are sort of things that would happen. Now, once you have an increase in production of these raw materials, we have to now turn it into something to add value to it. One, it increases the longevity of the product, stability in terms of, because when there's a glut in terms of tomatoes or onions or whatever, then we have issues with pricing. For instance, mangoes, for instance. When you dry the mango, and it's not a very complicated process, right? Dried, you can go out there and find out how much dried mangoes cost. 15 Ghana cedis a pouch. Now, a kilo of dried mangoes on the world market is costing $18. You understand? Guess what happens in this country? When the mangoes come in season, what happens? You see them on the roadside rotten. So the idea of having a district factory means that you're setting up an entity that is closer to where the raw material is, so that you'll be able to take advantage of it and move forward. Now, what you do is that you activate a whole value chain: transportation, marketing, storage, and then employment that would come to that particular sector. I can always concede that if you have challenges with an implementation of a project, let's deal with the specific problems that arises when the challenges come. But to say that it's probably a not well thought through policy and that we could have concentrated on other things. When the truth of the matter is, and people will be watching this thing and be asking, the NDC left power just 18 months ago, 19 months ago. So if they had all these fantastic ideas, what exactly did they do in terms of industrialization to start with? We all know the consequences of the Bosch attempt to do a sugar factory in Komenda, and what they used to, Komenda alone. And I used to debate Omanebuama all the time, that the Komenda sugar factory and the shoe factory that they had put up in Kumasi was single-handedly going to transform the economy of Ghana. And you're a journalist, you remember. And they even botched it. So to take lessons in terms of this thing, I mean, for me, it's neither here nor there. The truth of the matter is that with the implementation of any policy, you have teething problems. But the one district, one factory is here to stay, and government is committed to do so.
Okay.
There are other things that are actually en route that will make sure that we deal with the challenges and make sure that Ghanaian people would get work to do, add value to our products, and then sustain the economy.
Okay. A message here says, a message from Bawa UB Bartholomew says, Mr. Coker should please remember these factory owners can also register their companies under the 1D, 1F so that they can run again. So there are quite a few similar messages here. We shall be looking at them shortly. Remember to send them with the hashtag Breakfast Daily on all social media platforms, and the WhatsApp line is 0550-585-832. We'll move on to our next story now. So it's an online story.
Yes, nurses. So a couple of months ago, we talked about nurses not getting posted and being upset, and it looks like the unemployed nurses will be posted by the end of this year, and that's coming from the Minister of Health. So unemployed bonded nurses and midwives will receive their appointment letters by the end of the year. That's coming from the Minister of Health, Kweku Ajiman Menu. Can we
read it from Citi News? Yes, I'm reading from Citi News. We'll start with you, Joseph Kobina.
End of the year.
You're not satisfied with that?
Initially,
that's
they said
a recipe
they wanted
for them to cool them down.
Yeah.
Really? Let's not be too cynical.
They said that they were expecting to have been posted by March.
Exactly.
And now they're saying end of the year.
Exactly. That's where I'm going. A few months ago, they said they've got financial clearance and that they were going to, and this nurses even did a demonstration. Some of them were even whipped by the police, remember? So a few months ago. And now they say that end of the... Look,
I don't remember
when you go to Lagos, there's a hospital sitting there which needs to be staffed. What are they waiting for?
Now the hospital has been open.
It has not been staffed. Yeah, they don't have... They've just temporarily opened it because there was pressure.
Yeah.
So I've passed that been there. Nothing is happening there. You can't take emergency cases there.
But they're waiting for the phase 2 to be completed because the 10 key projects.
But phase 1 is completed. So why don't you use it?
I've seen the contract. There's a 10 key project.
Forget about the phase 2. The phase 2 is another project altogether. When you go there now, phase 1 has been completed. Equipment are inside. President Mahama commissioned it before he left office, right? I was there when it was being commissioned. So this, instead of waiting till end of the year, just put some of them there to work. Just put them there to work. I mean, these gimmicks, look, we are politicians, so me and him. I keep saying, politicians have got sweet mouth. They'll come and sit here 3 months, end of the year. I want you to mark this page, 3 months' time. I want you and your cameras to go around and find how many of them have been placed. And you come back in square one.
But why are we doing this to our health officials?
Well, you see, because they threatened to go, in Kumasi, the nurse said they were going on strike this week. So quickly, you have to say something to assuage their feelings. And that's the gimmick I'm telling you about. They're supposed to go on strike this week. So quickly, we put you 3 months time. They want to work today. And say 3 weeks time, 3 months time. What are you telling them?
Interesting.
Okay.
This is very interesting.
You see, I'm glad that he said we are politicians, but you see, facts are facts. Let me tell you, give me a bit of time. This your 1 hour is too short. You see, The NDC.
Oh,
between 2012 and 2016.
Chairman, you went there, Chairman, respectfully. You mentioned UGMC.
No. I'm saying that the hospital at Lagos.
I thought it was my turn.
Respectfully, Eric. Okay, Chairman.
Please,
let's discuss.
Out of power.
Chairman,
I'll still make my point.
Eric, let me ask my question.
No, but let me
ask my question respectfully. 14,254 nurses are going to get financial clearance.
Yes.
This is a good news, right? What are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts are very simple. Between 2012 and 2016, no nurses were employed by the NDC.
It's not true.
Let me finish.
It's not true.
When we came,
Allegedly.
When we came, we have posted 16,000 nurses who between 2012 and 2016 had left school and had not been posted. Let's say
16,000 of them were not 16,000 because I know some who were.
Remember, before we exited office, we employed some nurses. When they came to cancel all those appointments.
Okay.
Yes,
Chairman, please allow him.
I want him to get this record straight.
Chairman, you're still healing, so
2012 to 2016, there were 16,000 nurses who had gone through the system who had not been posted by the NDC government. In 2017, the MPP government posted 16,000 of these nurses. Again, the finance minister at the beginning of the year stated categorically that this year, the remainder of the nurses, and this is coming from 2017, 2016, 2017, and now we are in 2018, would also be posted. And it is a fact that, as we speak today, financial clearance has been given to the Ministry of Health for these nurses to be posted. Again, it's a classic issue when we come to this country where every year we have perennial issues with the posting of nurses and all of those things. People have found different ways. We've also had conversation as to
the best way under your government.
The best way to do it. But we have done it. We have done it.
But they are complaining.
But you see, I mean, I would empathize with anybody that has gone through nursing school and immediately after nursing school, they feel that the next month they should be posted. But when you speak to the folks at the Ministry of Health and all of those things, they'll tell you the sort of challenges that they'll have to go through to start with, seek clearance, because at the end of every year, it has to be part of a budgetary allocation and all of those things. We can find better ways of doing it. But when we're trying to juxtapose the treatment of student nurses or graduate nurses as opposed to another political party or government, I'm saying that. It's fair for me to say that.
No, but bottom line is that you see the fact is that the fact is that you said in March there was financial clearance. There was the intention to post them in March. Now these are not people who are free. Remember, they are bonded.
Yes.
These nurses are bonded. It means they can't work in any other facility apart from a government. So after bonding them and you are not employing them for years, I think there's a problem.
I'm saying that. You see, I think that we need to situate this in a very perfect, and the concept is very simple. When we took over power, right, and I'll make this point as many times as possible. When we took over power, there were nurses who had finished school 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, who had not been posted by an NDC.
Allegedly.
No, it's not allegedly.
Let's just move on to the next one.
So I'm saying that.
Can we move on?
This government has an argument shown. It's not weak. How's it weak? But have you posted it?
Eric, okay, wait. Eric, congratulations on the 16,000 that you
and then the
now there are 14,000 who are over 14,000 who have not been posted.
Financial clearance have been given to be posted before the end of the year.
But it's not enough. Because we're discussing. Respectfully, I don't want us to politicize this topic. Okay, there are thousands of young nurses out there who are frustrated. They've gone to school, they can't find jobs, and they are looking at us, right? They are looking at you guys to do the right thing. How difficult is it to post these nurses?
No, but that's why I say that. You see, I mean, and I'm glad he said that we are politicians. But
that's not a good answer. That's not something that a 25-year-old frustrated nurse wants to hear.
So you want me to answer,
yes,
right?
Please.
And I'm saying that when they go through the process, okay, for anybody to be employed in the public sector, you need financial clearance. It has issues to do with money. There's a budget that's allocated and you are ready to go. And I'm saying that the backlog of nurses that had not been posted, if you do a comparison, I mean, I don't know why you don't want me to do a comparison.
No, I don't want to.
If you do a comparison,
the problem is now.
Your closing statement, because we found out of time.
And that the government has said that, and the Ministry of Health has come out to state that financial clearance have been given for them to be posted. And I feel that government has actually done its fair share of that's actually fulfilled this side of the bargain, that these nurses are going to be posted.
Okay,
right?
Thank you.
Yes, but you have to situate
time, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Your final words.
To alleviate the problem of the nurses, the NDC government started to build hospitals all over the countries. All the countries, to ensure that when nurses come out of their training,
to be fair,
that's the wrong.
It's not that there were no hospitals. Even in Kolimbu, there's a nurse deficit. In which there's a nurse deficit.
Sometimes when you go to Kolimbu, for instance, you go to the accident ward, you see about 3, 4, 5 nurses doing the same job. You need to spread. That is why we build.
I don't think.
Please,
so you think infrastructure is
infrastructure.
Okay, just like you did with the schools, right?
We put the rich hospital. When you go to the Dodwa hospital, to man them.
Thank you.
So that we create employment for them. You go to Lagos, there's a huge hospital there.
Okay.
So I'm trying to remind him that during that period, we're building hospitals and placing them.
Thank you very much, Chairman Ade. The fact still remains that there are over 14,000 nurses. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Breakfast Daily continues. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.